Good afternoon. As per instructions, we should be starting officially in 3 minutes. In the meantime, I'm going to ask those who can be seated, if you could please take your seats, and in the meantime, take the time to put your phone on silent, please. We'll be streaming, so we want to minimize interruptions. And one way of doing that is to put your phone on silence, please. Well, good afternoon. I said good afternoon. Yes. See, I grew up in the country, and when I say good afternoon, if I should say good afternoon or Granny should say good afternoon, I don't answer. A report will be made. And according whatever needs to be done will be done. But I want to use up to welcome you. I'm Lawrence Nicholson, and I'm a senior lecturer in the Monash School of Business and Management. And I want to welcome you in my capacity as chair of this function this afternoon. We are here in the presence of distinguished persons, and one of whom is Honorable Dr. Horace Chang, our Deputy Prime Minister. And I will not seek to introduce others as yet, except to recognize our Executive Director of the Monash School of Business and Management, Dr. David McBean. This is indeed a very important gathering in the sense that we are addressing an important topic. I was walking across from one department to here, and I see where a section was cordoned off, which suggests that, or might be indicative of an aspect of security being put in place. And I was saying that this is a public forum on cybersecurity, I don't know that that will work. But then we have to do what we have to do. So again, welcome. We have started a little late, and I want to welcome those online because we are streaming. And in that regard, I want to try to maximize the time because I know that you're busy people, and we want to get you out of here before it's too late. And so at this time, I'm going to be calling on Dr. David McBean, Executive Director of Mono School of Business and Management, to bring remarks.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. Good afternoon. I don't believe it's evening yet. So good afternoon to those in attendance and online. And welcome on behalf, first of all, on behalf of the Mono School of Business and Management, I want to welcome you all. And while I will not go through the full guest list, I think I'd like to acknowledge Dr. Horace Chang, Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of National Security, and a resident of the West. Also, Colonel Desmond Chambers, head of MOCA. I don't know, I said Chambers. And I know Colonel Edwards very well. Colonel Desmond Edwards, Director General of MOCA, and the MOCA team. And all the other dignitaries and important folks online, please, welcome to the MSBM. It's an honor for us to be partnering with MOCA for the 10th anniversary celebrations. And at MSBM, we think of ourselves as natural partners of the security forces and agencies. In fact, we have more than 2 decades specifically training the leadership of national security. So it's no coincidence that both the head of the Jamaica Constabulary Force and the head of the Jamaica Defense Force are alumni of MSBM. And we count many other leaders in the public and private sector as alumni, and we think that's our mandate, really, as the premier business school in the English-speaking Caribbean to produce leadership. And this evening shows leadership of another kind in this partnership, because cybersecurity is a pressing problem. And even though MOCA is for organized crime and anti-corruption, cybersecurity has moved away from major organized crime to just crime in general, whether it's hacking of your WhatsApp, hacking of whatever it is to get into your bank accounts, etc. So this is very, very timely for us to be talking about this. And we're pleased to be contributing our own expertise through the panel. There are 2 of our researchers, both in AI and specifically cybersecurity, that I believe are appropriate to this forum. So, again, we're proud to be partnering with MOCA. I'll take liberty as host. I don't think I've ever done this, Colonel Edwards, but publicly thank yourself and Selwyn Hay and MOCA for protecting me at a time when I needed protection, and I leave it at that, and stepping in when maybe others were a little deficient. And I'll refer to that to say that agencies like MOCA are not just important on an agency-to-agency basis. They're important to allow other public officials to carry out their jobs free from fear and to the good of the country. So I congratulate you on 10 years of sterling service to the country, and hope that you have many more multiples of 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McBean. I'm going to be asking Colonel Desmond Edwards, who is the Director General of MOCA, who will come with remarks, and will be followed by Honorable Dr. Horace Chang, Minister of National Security and Deputy Prime Minister. In that order, I want to be less disruptive than possibly I've been to date. So I'm calling accordingly, after which I'll come back and do some introduction. Could we have...
Thank you, Chair. Dr. Horace Chang, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of National Security. Mr. David McBean, our host, Ms. Claudette Thompson, Acting DPP, other distinguished guests who are here present and those who have joined us online. Good evening and welcome. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome you here today to celebrate MOCA's 10th anniversary, but also to recognize and commemorate Cyber Month. And I see the head of JCERT, Lieutenant Colonel Godfrey Sterling, is with us in the audience, and I'd like to welcome you as well, Godfrey. This is a very important public lecture, and we're happy to have had the support from the Mona School of Business Management in hosting it. We're here tonight to explore the theme, tackling cybercrime through strategic partnerships. And it is indeed encouraging to see representatives from all aspects of Jamaica, from the government, from law enforcement, from the private sector, and of course from academia, present with us here. And this is a demonstration of the understanding of the urgency and also the complexity of the threat of cybercrime that we all grapple with. So as I stand here, it is worth reflecting on the era we now live in, the age of technology, the age of digital connection, an age defined by cyber. And in the same way that the industrial age fundamentally transformed society, we are now navigating the impacts, both positive and negative, of the cyber age. This is an era that connects us in ways that our predecessors in law enforcement and in fact in society would never have imagined, where technologies such as artificial intelligence and machine learning is defining the new societal orders, and where even our realities have become virtual. This evolution creates opportunities, but also significant risks. The digital world is no longer just an overlay on the physical. It is now a world of its own, where criminals operate across borders anonymously, making cybercrime a global and pervasive issue. This reality requires us to develop skills, tools, and partnerships that are adaptive and multifaceted to effectively combat the threats we now face, and of course, those that are on the horizon. Our reality is that every criminal enterprise today has a cyber component. This reality has reshaped the landscape of crime fighting. Organized crime, fraud, and corruption now bears the fingerprints of digital methodologies. Cyber criminals today are not just tech-savvy individuals operating in isolation. They are organized networks, adaptive, and are constantly evolving. Financial crimes, identity theft, intellectual property violations, trafficking, these have all moved into the cyber realm. In the same way, we have once responded to physical threats. Our response must now match the sophistication of the digital criminals. This is why MOCA has put focus on building cyber forensic and cyber investigative expertise and aligning our strategies to meet these unique demands. But expertise alone is not enough. Partnership is key. To meet the scale of this threat, collaboration between government, law enforcement, and private sector is critical. And tonight's partnership with the Mona School of Business and Management exemplifies a model that is essential to our success. Academia provides not just research and technical skills, but also the space for innovation and the training of tomorrow's cyber security experts. Together we are stronger, equipped not just only to understand the threats before us now, but to anticipate those on the horizon, to be proactive rather than reactive. I want to emphasize that combating cybercrime is not just about protecting financial assets and data. It's about ensuring our national security and the confidence of our citizens. These digital threats impact our communities, our economy, and also our sovereignty. And we must use every resource at our disposal to defend against them. So as we begin tonight's discussion, I encourage each of us to think about our individual and collective roles in the fight against cybercrime. Thank you for your partnership, for your presence, and for your commitment to this mission. I look forward to the insights and strategy that will emerge from tonight's discussion. Thank you.
In this room, I'm the layperson. That's the only cyber experts. Mr. Chairman, good afternoon to you, sir. I'm a countryman as well. Colonel Desmond Edwards, Director General, a lot of countrymen, so it's Goldman Edwards as well, from the hills of Clarendon. My friend Dr. Matt Bean, Executive Director, Mr. Burgess, our international consultant. The Bureau of Spans is here. Mr. Forrest, I remember that you have known he had been trying to teach me a little bit about cyber. The MOCA senior management team and the management team from the Mona School of Business. I understand some members of the media here, good friends and a number of interested parties. Again, good evening to you all. My pleasure to join this evening in this and say a few remarks as you organize this particular discussion, tackling cybercrime through strategic partnerships, which is an evolving threat risk in the security of our country. So I must commend the major MOCA, the major organized crime and anti-corruption agency, which started out as a primary investigation and anti-corruption activity, but has really become one of our primary reservoir of cyber crime skills, or cyber, whatever brand you want to use on it, cyber forensic activity. We take some pride in that we have that facility and recognize our acting DPP. I'm sorry, right? Just as well, they too, cyber provided new challenges for the prosecuting arm as well. It's a very extended collaborative effort with Mona School of Business and a very timely one. Jamaicans must be kept informed about the reality and risk of cyber crimes, and this forum presents an interactive and innovative way of engaging the public about this faceless crime. Well, it's assumed faceless, but it can be quite personally damaging. I'll just start my remark with some recently published cybercrime data that was given by my research assistant and those who advise me, and I suspect some from Colonel Edwards' department as well, to set the stage and outline the context in which we now operate. It is said IBM cost of a data breach report for 2024 estimates that the global average cost of data breach was about $4.88 million, a 10% increase over 2023. It is consistently reported 72% increase in data breaches since 2021, which means more and more people are getting involved in ransomware activity. The country are being exposed, and we have had a number, and the Jamaica government institutions, including our cabinet office, and more on occasion, Reverend Colonel Godfrey Sterling is here and can tell you. They collaborate effectively with MOCA and, of course, the police department to deal with the issues that arise. It's estimated that the global annual cost of cybercrime is predicted to reach about $9.5 trillion in 2024. They're getting smarter, they're getting more aggressive, and they're utilizing this access. Well, they're hacking into the system, as we know have what cybercrime does. Cyber does is connect the entire globe. And that, therefore, if you can break into it and open the doors, you're opening not just one bank or one country, you open the entire global spectrum that is involved. Compounding this is the rising cost of damage resulting from cybercrime, which is expected to maybe reach $10.5 trillion. Locally, of course, we are concerned a number of what you might call digital crime. The Americans call it elder fraud. We call it scamming, and at another time they call it advanced fee fraud, which in fact is a product of a digital age and have many young individuals who oftentimes sent out of school because they are not smart and they are indisciplined, and then they go to school and earn hundreds of thousands of US dollars from some very senior professional in the United States. Some retired, some not quite at retirement yet, but pose a serious problem to our law enforcement officers. Of course, because we use the term cyber, we sometimes see it as described as faceless and depersonalize it. But in fact, all criminal activity, most organized criminal law are involved in some kind of cyber activity. And scamming, of course, spins off as our largest cause of homicides in Jamaica. We have always had a high incidence of homicides, but today it is emerging as the primary cause as young men earn huge amounts of money. They have never worked 8 to 4 a single time in their life. They suddenly have enough money to really make themselves the big man in the community than they do. And of course, if a quarrel emerges from illegitimate gains, illicit gains, they know how to acquire fast cars, buy guns, and perpetuate the level of violence that we have gotten too used to in Jamaica. Thank the current commissioner and his team, and the police in the whole is working together with MOCA and number one, and have some impact, but there's still a long way to go. But much of the evolving crime and violence revolves around the use of digital instruments, just at the base. Cybercrime presents new challenges, of course, that policymakers, law enforcement, and business operators must partner to contend with. Because the challenge is new, and sometimes in the early days, but the lawyers used to look at some of our young judges in Montego Bay, at the DPP would look at a young man of 17 walking who has very literate. Now, he was expelled for not being successful in school. But he comes into the courtroom and he is handling a laptop or a telephone very smoothly, speaks very well, dressed very well because he earned quite a bit of money from his scamming. And of course, the judge would look at and wonder if this was not some young man to rescue, because our problem is that there's a large amount of our we are marginalized a large percentage of our young males. And therefore, give him a nice lecture and send him home. Not knowing that by the time he gets out for the weekend, he would have maybe earned another 100,000 years, paid his lawyer well, and get on with his work. So cybercrime has, however, become a pervasive global challenge. And given the highly digitized global marketplace, Jamaicans are increasingly vulnerable to these cyber threats. Indeed, as a government, we are seeking to digitize government services, and the entire society, business community is moving to digital age rapidly, because digitization, cyber activity, essentially increases efficiency speed of communication, ease of storage and recovery of data, and vital information. So the entire community is becoming cyber involved, so to speak, or digitized, and that, of course, exposes everyone, if it is not, to cyber threats. And this is the challenge that our law enforcement agencies, who have to continue to deal with the guy who's pulling the trigger, who may be the one who have not yet learned to read and write properly and not yet ready to use his telephone to smart. So it become a security for the criminals. And while dealing with that, I still have to find the gentleman who only Mr. Edwards have spotted on the dark web that is now extracting millions of dollars, have created his pocket on the dark web and storing millions for other people. And those are the people I still have to have a police force and a security team that is ready to deal with all of them on our sides. It demonstrates, of course, this evening, of course, demonstrates what the direction of the move in which we not only have to prepare the law enforcement agencies, but there has to be extensive collaboration between the business, academia, and all the technical team that is required to ensure we can deal with this very corrosive activity that will definitely undermine our society. The frequency and nature of cyber attacks that have been disrupting business and threatening social and political stability in several parts of the industrialized world represent an equally present threat risk to Jamaica. Indeed, we are aware of more than rumors that evolved that in a big election of our big neighbor who was supposed to be more advanced, that was interrupted and disrupted and manipulated by simple cyber activity, which deal with political stability and social order across, and it can be a real challenge. Our law enforcement entities devise tactics and strategies to combat the conventional crime. The cyber-based criminal landscape has fast evolved into a costly, clear, and present threat risk to Jamaica business owners and operators and government systems. So while we emphasize and expand our law enforcement agencies, still have to ensure they have the character and quality and introduce the technology to deal with the emerging or evolving, really, because it's more than emerge, cyberspace criminal activity. Thank the Mona Business School, which has trained a number of our leading business. I think the MSc in security is here, and quite a number of our officers in both all branches of the law enforcement agencies in Jamaica have come to Mona and done the course. The JDF, Jamaica Consular Force, and of course MOCA and others have several of their young leaders coming through Mona. In fact, the police force currently at the officer level, maybe about 80% of them have a second degree, many of which are MSc from this school. A number of others are in law, and other areas of the university have come to the university to improve their skill set. So they have been preparing themselves, and express my appreciation for that to the university and commend the force. Finally, this public lecture will, of course, highlight not only the gravity of the situation, but importantly, the vital strategic partnership play in building a resilient cybersecurity framework, and in partnership not only locally, including business, academia, and the law enforcement agencies, but internationally. One thing that the cyber criminal doesn't have is any boundaries. So whether he's on a boat in St. Vincent enjoying himself and have a computer and a Starlink connection, or he's happened to be downtown Kingston or Montego Bay in a shack somewhere with just the internet link, the borders are endless. We have seen young men in Montego Bay who they're doing some of their activity, you'd suddenly find it ends up somewhere in Romania or Lithuania, and you run into a roadblock from somebody, I said, who was expelled from school for being indisciplined and dunce. The complexities of the cybercrime in the state are a united front, one that harnesses the expertise and resources of law enforcement, academia, the private sector, government, and our international partners. We have to begin to adjust legislation on a regular basis. In fact, given the nature of our government, the legislation almost inevitably lags behind. Or I was advised, I'm not by a legal mind and a drafter, that to do a decent piece of legislation in Jamaica, it takes about 2 years. Most of our legislation have gone more than 5 years in the mill. And at the rate at which cyber activity evolves, that's like 100 years. That's a challenge. So we face challenges on all fronts. dealing with that. One that has the expertise and resource of law enforcement, academia, and the private sector. Our international partners have to work collaboratively. There must be knowledge and information sharing geared towards developing innovative solutions, creating a comprehensive response strategy will enhance our collective cybersecurity posture. All our agents, and I know too that the DPP's office have their own legal minds doing, well, the cyber law is in order from a prosecuting point of view. I met a couple of the officers who have been there, and I know they have been out doing the work. In this vein, therefore, I urge you all to participate actively in the discussion, share your insights, raise your concerns, and contribute your expertise. Lecture is not just a platform for information dissemination. It is a collaborative effort, not only between MOCA and MSBM, but to foster a culture of cybersecurity awareness and preparedness in Jamaica. I fully endorse the initiative. Wish you all an informed, information-rich, and productive evening. Again, let me thank MOCA and Mona School of Business for initiating this discussion, and wish you all a good evening, a good series of lecture, and that you leave here not only more informed, but in terms of the technical knowledge, but establishing a knowledge, personal knowledge between the experts who you can link with and create an even stronger ecosystem for cybersecurity in Jamaica. Thank you again.
I want to thank Colonel Desmond Edwards, along with Dr. Oris Chang, for bringing remarks. And in their remarks, they've captured essential areas that will be discussed this evening. At the Mona School of Business and Management, we believe in investigating what aspect of life from an intellectual perspective, but we also believe in the empirical. And so whatever we do, we try to address the empirical. And indeed, when you come to Mona School of Business and Management, you do not leave the same that you came. So we have two mutually exclusive objectives when you come into our space. One, either you leave here more informed in terms of we adding to your knowledge, or you leave here with your ignorance being rearranged. It is our prayer and desire for the former to be the case rather than the latter. But in the event that you avoid the former, we would not deny you of the latter. And so in that regard, I'm going to be inviting Mr. Mark Burgess, International Cybercrime Consultant, a MOCA, and he will be making a presentation. And this will be followed by a panel discussion. And I want, with your permission, sir, just to that we can have a smooth and seamless transition into the panel discussion, just to introduce or give snippets of those who will be part of the panel discussion. And I'm going to start with Mr. Mark Burgess, who is the main presenter. Mr. Mark Burgess is an international cybercrime advisor working with Jamaica law enforcement through a USINL-funded program. He's ex-UK law enforcement, having been first recognized an expert witness in 2005. He has given evidence and as expert for the prosecution, defense, and as a joint expert. He is a man who has tremendous knowledge in this area. And among the panelists, in the panel discussion, we have Dr. Maurice McNaughton, who is director of the Center of Excellence and Innovation at MSBM. He has over 20 years of senior management and leadership experience in plan and direction of enterprise-level information technology in organization, and these other things. And we have Dr. Charlotte not Charlotte, Charlotte Donalds, who is a full-time faculty member and senior lecturer in the Mona School of Business and Management, the University of West Indies. She, happily to say that she gained her PhD here at the University of West Indies in Management Information System. It's a program that we had here, which is a very, very good program. Then we have Mr. Trevor Forrest. So Forrest is this distinguished IT practitioner with over 3 decades of experience, particularly recognized for his expertise in cybersecurity, digital transformation, and artificial intelligence. And I want to tell you that he has knowledge in this, but he's not artificial. And then we have Ms. Julianne Edwards. And you notice, and the fact that she sits close to the door is not indicative of any rush to get out, right? But somebody has to guard the door, and better you than me. And she is at the Office of Director of Public Prosecution within the ODPP. She is the head of the Cybercrimes and Digital Forensic Unit, important person, and deputy head of Mutual Legal Assistance and Financial Crimes Unit. I'm happy to say that she is alumnus from where she gained her law degree at the University of West Indies Caville campus, and she graduated certainly with a first-class honors in 2012. So she's a pretty young lady, and top student at Norman Manley Law School, where she graduated in 2014. Certainly, we are happy to have all of you and know that you will be value added in your contribution. But before we have the panel, we're now going to have somebody just to give a presentation. Could we have him, please?
Good evening. Dr. Chang, Dr. McLean, Colonel Edwards. I knew I was going to miss somebody. Miss Thompson, Colonel Sterling, fellow panelists, esteemed guests. Welcome, good evening. I've been duped, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, there might have been a fraud committed, a fraud through misrepresentation. When I was asked, would I be prepared to be involved in a small speaking engagement, I said, sure. On what? On strategic partnerships. Cool. How long have I got? An hour? 2 hours? 20 minutes. Great. What I didn't realize was what he was referring to was the 20 minutes was the amount of time it was likely to take me to say good evening to all of the dignitaries. Luckily, the rain has put some of them off. I'm telling myself it's the rain and not my speaking style, at least anyway. So, have we got the slides up? Thank you. Oh. There's a little bit of a delay. Yeah, there's a little bit of a delay. I'm not pressing anything. And I'm not touching it. Okay, right. So I'm going to talk to you this evening about the unified front, collaborative strategies in the battle against cybercrime. Didn't touch that. I'm going to touch on the landscapes that cyber criminals use and the collaborations and alliances. I'm going to look at the ecosystem in which we operate in, amongst those the government, industry and academia. And I'm going to look at creating synergies for optimal operational, tactical and strategic impact. And I'm going to look at a case study that we've managed within MOCA to show you how these things work or how they go when they work successfully. These strategic partnerships do not work. I found myself saying exactly that thing about 4 or 5 years ago. never thinking that I would be stood in front of a room full of people talking about strategic partnerships. I might need to start talking very, very quickly here, otherwise this might be the most public resignation in Jamaican public speaking history, and give you some context. Given what I need to say is that given that my presence here is as a result of a strategic partnership between MOCA and the US, and I work with Jamaican law enforcement across the board, right? So the context of this is I started to work for an international utility company, sorry, excuse me, I'm being attacked, by an international utility company that had just been compromised, which had hugely affected its ability to operate and its reputation. I was brought in as the Director of Cyber Defence to look at how things could be changed. Day one or day two, I sit with the partners of the organisation, big partners, international partners, who you would know by name domestically. And they were providing services to this company at a strategic level. These partnerships had been signed off and they were monitoring the network and reporting on incidents. I asked for a report of what incidents were outstanding, and I was told that they reported on a monthly basis in the second week after the month had finished. So effectively, an incident could happen on day one of the month, and they wouldn't report on it until 6 weeks later. As I said, the contracts were in place, the strategic contracts were in place. There was SLAs, there was KPIs, there was dashboards that were all green, and everything looked hunky-dory. That's when I turned to my boss and said, these strategic partnerships are not working. Hopefully, that's not my resignation. What I'm saying to you is, when we're talking about partnerships, the partnerships that we enter into have to work on a number of different levels. I would say that those partnerships always have to have an operational impact. If there is no operational impact, it doesn't matter whether they've been born out of a strategic alliance or a tactical alliance. If the operational success is not there, they will die on the vine. They are of no use whatsoever. What I would say here is that if you think of strategic as long-term, tactical as short-term, but the operational impact has always got to be about what it is that you're trying to deliver. So in the law enforcement context, it's whether we're having an impact on crime, whether we're dealing with and investigating that criminal fraternity. Within the commercial environment, again, it was all about being able to respond to those incidents. Something I want to introduce you to, which is the problem analysis triangle. When I first came into law enforcement, which was a number of years ago, I won't say exactly how many, the problem analysis triangle was all the rage, and it was about how to deal with conventional crime. So if you had a conventional crime of robbery, you would look at how you tackled it by looking at the three sides of that triangle. You would look at the offender and how you could address that offender. You would look at the location. You would look at the victim. So with the victim, you might push out awareness of particular crime in a particular area. You might push out crime prevention advice and or other types of advice, and to protect the individual. Within the location, you might put up CCTV, better lighting, better fencing, whatever it might be to address the location. Things have moved on now into the cyber world, but that triangle still actually is relevant. The offender is still the criminal. I'm going to jump into the criminal very, very quickly. When it comes to threat actors, the individual threat actors can be incredibly flexible. There are few barriers for them to entry. All they have to do is go to the local computer shop or the mobile phone shop, get online, mobile data, and they're away. Very few barriers to entry. They're not inhibited by the law. And if there are any consequences, if it goes wrong, they just start all over again. When it comes to law enforcement, we're the exact opposite. That's a quote taken not just by me, but in international press over a few weeks ago, which is saying that the bad guys are working together, suggesting that threat actors are no longer working independently. They're not just working locally, nationally, but internationally, often working with nation-state threat actors if there is a common goal. But what actually drives them all is the success that they have and the money that they make. It's a very lucrative area. I can say that from my experience of working with MOCA, that there was a particular instance where two named known threat actors were on the same compromised network at the same time. What it wasn't possible to say was whether they were working in collaboration, but they were definitely in the same space at the same time. So it's even been evident within Jamaica that the collaborative trend is increasing. This is a model of how cyber threat actors have been working together over recent years. It starts with the RAS operator who develops the code. Sorry, I said RAS, the ransomware as a service. It's not a Jamaican reference. That develops the code. They put it out there, and then the access broker goes and finds some means of getting into a network, whether it by finding credentials, access to an open RDP, whatever it might be, and they then pass that on to the ransomware as a service affiliate. They get, with that access that they've been handed over, they access the network, move laterally, and expand their access to the point where they can then hand that over again back to the operator, who will explode the encryption, encrypting everything on the network, and then starts the communication with the victim. Now, that's working for them, and it's working on a huge scale. My point would be is if it works for them, and if the collaborations nationally and internationally work for them, then it's something that law enforcement should absolutely be doing, right? Back to the triangle. What I've done is expanded that out a little. So in the cyber world, not only have we got location, the location becomes civilian infrastructure. It's no longer a real world thing. So we're talking about your banks, your telecommunications companies, you're talking about critical national infrastructure. That's what forms the location within the cyber world. The offender is still addressed and targeted by law enforcement, but the victim now actually becomes private infrastructure. And that private infrastructure can be a single device, a single computer, or it can be 100,000 endpoints, servers, cloud-based storage, you name it, it can be across the board. Now, I'm lucky enough to have worked on all three sides of that triangle. I've worked in the civilian infrastructure, in the banking industry, and in the telecoms industry. I've worked in law enforcement as an investigator. And I've been unlucky enough to be in the private infrastructure space when they've been compromised and they've been a victim of a cyber attack. What I would say is, whenever I've sat on any one side of that triangle and I've faced a problem, I've always wanted to have the access that the other sides of those triangle have. And I knew that if I had that access, I would be able to solve the problem easily. However, I don't have that access, and neither does law enforcement. But the only way that we will ever manage this and we will ever get to this is through those strategic partnerships between law enforcement, between civilian infrastructure, when there is an incident between the victim and private infrastructure, and collaborating, cooperating, and sharing that information. If we don't, we will never tackle cybercrime as an issue, and they will run rampant. Okay, I'm going to jump into an example of when strategic partnerships work. Okay, so this is an example. NWC, the National Water Commission, in August last year, discovered that they had been a victim of a business email compromise. Over $1 million had been transferred to an account that was beyond the legitimate access and the legitimate partners within the business. They reached out to domestic law enforcement, MOCA, and asked for assistance. MOCA reached out to its international law enforcement partners in the US, who were then able to reach out to their civilian infrastructure partners and have that money seized. Success story in itself, $1 million stopped from getting into cyber threat actors' pockets. We then start a dynamic tactical relationship, tactical partnership with NWC to be able to get the data that they had access to, that we could analyze, that we could then act upon. And that wasn't a single day, that wasn't a single instant, that was back and forth, and that was the partnership that we have to enter into. I'm not going to steal one of my fellow panelists' thunder about working and the relationship, partnership between private infrastructure, but it was very dynamic, let's put it that way. We were then able to work back and forth with international law enforcement, again, US partners, who work with their civilian infrastructure, back and forth, each partnership being worked upon. What I would say is that, I said it before, the private infrastructure, NWC to MOCA, was a tactical partnership in the short term. The relationship between MOCA and its international partners in the US was definitely a strategic partnership which has been worked on over many years, and I'm sure that the relationship between US partners with the civilian infrastructure in the US was again a strategic relationship. What it enables us to do was then reach out to a further international law enforcement partner on a tactical partnership and provide them with the intelligence. What that resulted was the Nigerian anti-corruption police being able to execute warrants locally in Nigeria and detain and question 2 individuals for an international cybercrime that affected Jamaica. In summary, threat actors and criminals are using collaboration and partners to good effect. If it's good enough for them, it's got to be good enough for us, right? The environment in which we operate requires information sharing. No individual entity has ever got all of the answers, in the same way as no individual has ever got the answers. Partnerships that we enter into today, tomorrow, have to work at an operational level and preferably at a strategic and tactical level as well. And as I've demonstrated, just when everything works and everything fits together and we work collectively, the good guys win. Thank you very much.
Presentation was packed with knowledge, and we're going to get the opportunity to tabernacle a little bit in part of that knowledge. Pray that the tabernacling will not be 40 days, right, or 40 years in the wilderness, but we'll be certainly be educated as well. So at this time, we are going to now move into the panel discussion, and our moderator will be Dr. Maurice McNaughton, who is the Director of Center of Excellence and Innovation, MSBM, and we other members of whom I made reference earlier with regard to introduction, going to be Dr. Charlotte Donald, Senior Lecturer, Unit Head, Decision Science Information System, MSBM, Mr. Trevor Forrest, CEO, is M36 Technology Solutions and member of the National AI Task Force, and Ms. Judy Ann Edwards, Head of Cybercrimes and Digital Forensic Unit, and Deputy Head, Mutual Legal Assistance and Financial Crimes, Office of the Director of Public Prosecution. At this time, before Dr. McNaughton, though, I should have said before, but those of you might have gone and would have done a scanning of QR code, and you'd have got the agenda. I'm sure many of you have gone ahead without me telling you that, but that's okay. There is no crime there. Right? Dr. McNaughton?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I want to extend my own welcome to you all to this really important and very, very topical discussion on tackling cybercrime through partnerships. And thank you for that dissertation, Mark. I think it was very useful and provides a very useful platform for the panelists to offer their own perspective from their own vantage points. I'm Chair, I would be grateful if you would allow me to observe prior protocol. So, although I would want to recognize the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister, Honorable Dr. Horace Chang. Thank you for being here, sir. And of course, other members of the hierarchy of MOCA that is celebrating their 10th anniversary. So as I said, that was a quite comprehensive mark. Provides a very useful framework and insight that offers much food for thought. And of course, we're going to come back to you later when we get to the Q&A. But we do want to move to, let's call it the second segment of the program, where we bring together varied perspectives that represent key segments of those broad societal actors that Mark just suggested needed to be part of this strategic collaborative fight against cybercrime. So this will be a panel discussion. We have three, shall I say, excellent speakers, and varied because they represent together academia, the private sector, and the public sector. Well, the legislative side of the public sector. So that does offer a kind of variety for what I hope will be a very robust discussion. How we'll proceed is that I'll have each of them do a presentation for 7 minutes. Is that what we agreed? And again, this is from their own vantage points, right? And again, you probably see sort of different perspectives. And once we've had those 3 presentations, then I'll probably have maybe 1 round of questions for the panelists, and then we're going to open it to the floor, because really the idea here is that we give you the opportunity to engage with the experts who bring, again, their varied perspectives to this quite important discussion. So I'm going to start with the private sector. And of course, Lawrence, Chairman, you already introduced the panelists, but we have Mr. Trevor Forrest, Chief Executive Officer of 876 Technology Solutions. And he's a member of the National AI Task Force, but I suspect he's wearing his private sector hat for this evening's discussion. So over to you, Trevor. How are you going to present, from here, or?
I think I'll go up there, since that's where the clicker is. I'm not used to. Should I use this or? All right. So, good evening, everybody.
You put the mic up a little.
Yeah. Yeah. Good evening, everybody. All right. So, what I'm going to do in my presentation, I wanted to create some context, but I'm also going to stick to the same triad that Mark had put forward, the victim, location, suspect triad. So to start, let me put some things in context, because a lot of times the conversation isn't properly contextualized, because we're like, why are we talking about this stuff anyway? Why is this thing of any value? What's the big deal? And I find it useful, both as a practitioner and also in the cybersecurity space, in the private sector, to talk about what matters the most, and that's the money. Because I don't think we quite understand the value of this cybercrime thing. So, to put it in a context, if we looked at all of the transnational crime that exists, and the value of all of that combined, that's trafficking in drugs, arms, any transnational crime you can think of, the total value of that is $2.2 trillion combined, right? A lot of money. You may have heard the minister say, look, this cybercrime thing is pretty expensive, pretty costly. But if you look at what happened between, in the last 3 years, the value of cybercrime up to about 2022, that value, about $6 trillion. So right away, it eclipses the combined value of all the other things that people worry about, drug trafficking, small arms trafficking, all of that. Eclipses it. Threefold. All right? $16 billion a day. Now, who wouldn't want to be part of that business? Right? Next year, projected value, $10 trillion, which makes this thing that people can't figure out what the big deal is, the 3rd largest economy in the world, behind the US and China. Now, let that sink in for a second, because there's a lot of money to be made in cybercrime. All right? So that's the context. That's why this is important. If you think about what has transpired in Jamaica, the banks alone report over $1 billion worth of fraud. Just the banks, and that's what they know of. Right? In 2015, the statistics I had, and I'm pretty sure they're around the same, Jamaica was losing about $100 million US to this thing. It's not chum change. All right? So, with that percolating in mind, let's now look at, and I'm going to put this in the perspective again of what is happening as it relates to strategic partnerships. Why are they perhaps not working?
and what we have to do to make them work. So let's start with the victim. And you're going to notice a theme in every slide that I have here, and it's deliberate. First problem we have is nobody don't want to share information. Why? Because them don't trust each other. Those who know what's happening won't say anything. We have a culture. But not only is it that they don't trust, they are worried. So if you look at private sector companies, they're worried about, okay, if I report this, if I share this information, what kind of reputational damage does that have on my business? Because the purpose of my business and my main priority is to make some money. And when I go and share this information, hoping that it doesn't get out and it gets out, then it impacts my ability to make money. With the advent of the data protection legislation, one of the things that happens now is, whether out of convenience or truth and reality, the ability now to just up and share information has some legal ramifications. And again, businesses, again, in protecting the money, because lawsuits abound, they are, skittish about sharing information. And now that the law has put that into a different perspective, again, the challenge of sharing information is always there, right? The last thing as it relates to victim protection, or the victim side of that triad, is the fact that public awareness is not where it needs to be as it relates to what is happening here. That's one, because we don't really understand the vastness of this threat, right? The culture is, in Jamaica, a small fry. Nobody not attacking us. We have no money to steal. Not so. I can give you 100 million reasons why. But also, there is a skills gap, because one of the challenges we have is we don't have enough people in the space to actually defend against the kinds of threats that have emerged and that are evolving on a daily basis, right? So that's the victim side of things, because these are the things that affect the victim. And victims don't only mean the business, it's the individual as well, right? Now, when we look at the location part, again, nobody not telling you where the attack came from, when it happened, or which agency or company, and where in Jamaica it may have happened, or where it originated from. We have seen attacks, and again, this threat landscape has no barriers, no boundaries, right? We have seen attacks coming from all over the globe. And because these things are so complex, they are so dynamic, one of the things that is important in order to treat with this kind of attack is you have to have some framework of communication, some standards, some hard and fast way of making sure that when these things are happening, the communication channels are clear and everybody understands what they are. And if we don't have that, then the information is very dispersed and there's no cohesiveness in that. And as such, you cannot attack the problem. And when you look at the level of complexity of some of these attacks, when you're talking about cross-border, cross-jurisdiction, all of these things, when you mix it all up, the legal issues, the communication issues, and all of the components, if they're not in sync, then you cannot attack this problem. It doesn't happen. And again, this is why it's important to figure out, because this is the biggest challenge, figure out how do we get everybody in that triad that needs to work together, So lastly, let's talk about the suspect. Now, the minister will tell you that when you look at some of the crimes that are happening in a lot of our communities, everybody know what's happening. And in many instances, everybody know who is doing what. But they're not sharing that information. Why? Because, again, if this man knows say is me, boss upon him, well, what is going to happen to me? Well, the same thing happens, again, in the private sector space. And I can give you an instance where not only from businesses, but also practitioners in the space. Got you. And, well, this is my last slide. A lot of them will come to my company, come to me directly and say, listen, some things are going on and you may want to be aware of them. And I'm like, well, why you don't go and engage the law enforcement? No, not doing that. Afraid of police. Very good at what they do, but they have hang-ups engaging. So they would say, yeah, we tell you, you tell them, right? And again, when you look at this kind of thing, everybody knows what is happening. A lot of things are happening in the space. And because we do not have a clear understanding of what needs to be in place to, one, engender that trust, make sure that there are some ways in which if information needs to be communicated, it is communicated in ways that everybody feels comfortable, then what we're going to find is that the strategic partnerships that we need are not going to work because the components that are critical for making it work don't trust each other. And because of that, you have a difficulty in gaining that edge that you need, because one thing that does not prevail in the threat landscape among threat actors is they have no qualms about sharing information and collaborating. So I'm going to leave it at that, and then we can take up the discussion and the panel starts. But I just wanted to, and again, you will notice my key thing here is the whole matter of trust. Because if there is no trust among the players, this thing is not going to work. So the challenge is, how do we get that trust that is required to make this work? All right.
All right, thank you very much, Trevor. So that's the perspective from the vantage point of a private sector actor. And let's now turn to academia. Let me invite my colleague, Dr. Charlotte Donalds, to give us some perspective from the academy. Charlotte.
All right. Thank you, Dr. McNaughton. Well, Mark, you thought you had a difficult task? Well, 7 minutes. Let me tell you, I'll be sprinting today, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully, Usain won't catch me. Anyway, so I'm looking at strategic partnership from the academic and research perspective. All right. Okay. I think I probably sent the wrong slides. All right. Anyway, I'll go. There was supposed to be an agenda, but so in 2015, the United Nations presented some sustainable development goals, 17 of them. And the idea that these goals were really supposed to transform our world. In general, it was just a call to action to end poverty and inequality, to protect the planet, and to ensure that all people enjoy health, justice, and prosperity. But I really want to focus on Goal 17, which is entitled Partnerships for the Goals. Now, this Sustainable Development Goal is really supposed to support all the other goals. So the United Nations actually proposed that for a sustainable development agenda to work, then there requires strategic partnerships between government, civil society, and public sector. So while there has been some movement in terms of public and partnerships, strategic partnerships, there have been challenges, some of which are being displayed. I'll just like to highlight a few. For example, lack of coordination, capacity building, and of course, insufficient data for monitoring and decision making. So when I think about strategic partnership, here I'm thinking about a network that involves or that goes beyond the traditional ecosystem of government and the private sector, but to also include international organizations, NGOs, supply partners, media, and such the likes, because we can all agree that everyone is at risk. And in this network that I'm proposing, you will see that academia is, of course, juxtaposed in the middle. And why? Because it's my view, and perhaps my colleagues' view, maybe you don't share that view, but without universities and scientists, I believe that there will be very little innovation, and certainly knowledge sharing and all of that is required for innovation and for providing insights and really interrogating phenomena in such a way to provide, policy, decisions and outcomes for decision making and for policy. So I am proposing and agreeing that academia is indeed an important element in any strategic partnership, and certainly for Jamaica it is. But the truth is, and ladies and gentlemen, I don't have any empirical evidence, but anecdotally, and I kind of heard that across some of the presentations so far, that in Jamaica here, I don't think we really value research, or we don't understand it much. I don't think we really see the benefits that can be derived from research, that it can aid development, it can increase its capacity, it can be used for knowledge sharing and such the likes. Oftentimes, people see research as theory. It's just mainly theory, something that is abstract, it's esoteric, it's not probably practical at all. But I really want to push back on that, because research is really informed by theory, and it explains human behavior and actions. And I've seen where, and perhaps others of us here too have seen where research is leveraged in other jurisdictions, right, to inform public policies, frameworks, and such the like. And one particular example that came to my mind when I was thinking about this is NIST, the NIST organization. And they're not necessarily academic per se, but they have strategic partners, and they come up with a lot of frameworks that actually guide the cybercrime and cyber industry itself. And I'm pretty sure perhaps some of us have adopted some of those frameworks right here in Jamaica. So in terms of the local environment, I'm asking, and I've said to myself, are there really any strategic partnerships in academia? Maybe they are, but in my view, I'm thinking that they're probably not enough. And I'm asking also, why can't we have strategic partnerships which results in outcomes such as the NIST agency provides to other practitioners? I think we have the capacity here, and that we can also do that. So in looking at the Jamaica landscape, when I go online and I search in terms of cybercrime data, I'm mostly coming across, and this evening, Mark and Mr. Forrest just spoke about most of the data that is published on the global scale. But what about Jamaica and the Caribbean? Where's the data? So I'm mostly seeing stuff in the trade press, and they're just talking about data, in secondary data, in terms of cybercrime stats. But there is more, and there's more value to interrogating data. So looking ahead, we can all agree that strategic partnerships are indeed important. All right? And I'd said before that there are some frameworks, and many frameworks that are coming from these partnerships, but most of them reside in the global north. So what about the global south, where we reside in? So we need to contextualize our framework to our circumstance, especially given our resource constraints. Because sometimes we have found that some of these frameworks, they are resource heavy and very difficult to really assimilate and use in the context. So we need to develop our own frameworks, right here. So we need these partnerships. So fortuitously, everybody's mentioning lotto scamming. So am I. So we have this persistent problem, and it's been going on for years. And again, there are some scientific research that has been published, but mainly from the global north. But I'm sure we have data with regards to these lotto scammers. Where is this data? Can I get access? I'd certainly like to do some studies, some scientific research on this kind of data. There's some interesting questions perhaps that could be answered by interrogating this data, such as, what are the trend analysis? I don't know if anybody has looked at that. The victim and perpetrator profiles. What are the things that really drive some of these perpetrators, other than the get-rich mentality? But perhaps not getting this data or having access to it, or the lack of support, does not really lend itself to us scientists, social scientists, to really get dive deeper into the data, to interrogate this data in varying and very interesting ways, looking at the problem from different perspectives. So the partnership, definitely, strategic partnerships are indeed important. Another question that perhaps you could ask, how do we deter these lotto scammers? Do we understand the psychological, economical, technological profiles of these individuals? I'm suggesting that it may not be, or it may be individualistic. It could be groupistic or culturalistic. That's my own word. It may not be monolithic. Maybe it's just not a one-size-fits-all approach. But again, these kinds of problems would require some collaboration, and certainly here in academia. So one approach to perhaps helping us to understand some of, to answer some of these questions would be an approach that was presented by myself and a colleague, Ose Bryson. And this is a cybercrime classification ontology that was published in 2019. So this is an approach perhaps that we could use to help us then in capturing some of this data so we can interrogate it further. All right, now, this is almost my last slide, Maurice. Thank you so much. But as I thought about, the whole landscape, the cybercrime landscape, and how the threat actors and everything is changing, technology, they're just changing. I think of our Cybercrime Act, which is still at 2015. It says the Cybercrime Act of 2015 is still what we are using. And I know some years ago, and I did participate in an exercise to refresh or to make new the Cybercrime Act. But I really wonder what has happened to it, because I haven't heard anything yet about it. Perhaps, in my mind, that it may be stuck with our people from the global north. No disrespect, Sir Mark. But, I'm highlighting what is there on the board because, in this book here, that was, and I'm doing some selling, that myself and colleagues actually wrote, we proposed an integrated cybersecurity strategy for countries in the global south. And I think this, and with an implementation plan as well. So the capacity is here. We have the research skills. We have the knowledge and skill set. And so the strategic partnerships that you seek certainly is important, is relevant, and it's here. Lastly, opportunities for collaboration or for partnerships. So, Minister Chang, to you, sir, some funding. Right, so we want not just talk, but action. So we can collaborate to solve persistent problems like, elderly, what you call it? I wrote elderly fraud, advanced fee fraud, lot of scamming. Certainly. Public awareness here in the university. The students are, are leaders and workers of tomorrow. So we need to get them not only in terms of the skill set, but, aware of all the challenges and what is happening. And there are opportunities for publications and such the like. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Charlotte. Dr. Donalds, I hear you suggesting a number of ways in which academia can become a part of this virtuous collaboration. And perhaps we will come back to some of those mechanisms. But let me now turn to our public sector representatives. So I'm going to invite Ms. Julian Edwards. So Julian is the head of Cybercrimes and Digital Forensics Unit and Deputy Head, Mutual Legal Assurance and Financial Crimes in the Office of the Director of, the Office of the DPP. So, Julian, I don't know about the audience, but I have some interesting questions for you. Because you're going to be addressing the legislative
No, it's from the prosecutorial perspective, the prosecution of these cybercrime offenses.
Okay.
So, good afternoon, everyone. So, this presentation, there are several criminal offenses, several criminal offenses under the Cybercrimes Act. But in addition to those offenses that are created under the legislation, every traditional offense can have a cyber component. But because I only have 7 minutes, I will be focusing on the offense under the Cybercrimes Act, malicious communications, and might a video be played? There's a video on the first slide. Might that video be played, please? So while we wait on that video, the case in point that I'll be focusing on, or the case that brings out this offense, is the Queen against Donovan Powell. It's a 2021 case that was, it was appealed in 2020. Appeal was heard in 2021. However, this offense was committed several years prior. And in essence, the appellant, the accused or suspect, well, whatever term is used, and the complainant, who is the victim, they were involved in an intimate relationship. The relationship ended, and he sent several nude photos and vulgar memes to the complainant and also to a website. She was also threatened by him that she would be shot, stabbed, and destroyed. Following the investigation, and the case file was compiled and sent to the Office of the DPP for prosecution, he pleaded guilty to 3 counts of malicious communication under Section 9 of the Cybercrimes Act. Now, this section, which one do I say? Sorry, this section, Section 9, creates an offense, and it says that where a person commits an offense if that person uses a computer to send to another person any data, whether in the form of a message or otherwise, that is obscene, constitutes a threat, or is menacing in nature, and it is sent with the intention to harass any person or cause harm or apprehension of a person or to any other person or property. And an offense is committed regardless of whether the actual recipient of the data is or is not the person to whom the offender intended the data to be sent. So in a sense, as a prosecutor, what we have to prove is that, firstly, a computer was used to send the data, that this message was obscene, it constituted a threat, or it was menacing in nature, and it was sent with the intention to harass any person or cause harm or apprehension of harm to the person. Now, example of conducts that may amount to malicious communication, that might, for example, be revenge porn. We're seeing cases of these where it is that an example was seen in this case with Mr. Donovan Powell, the Queen against Donovan Powell, where pornographic images were sent by a former lover of the victim, and that was circulated. So there's instances of that. There might even be instances of what is loosely regarded as, loosely termed, cyber bullying or harassment or threats being made. Now, we have to prove that a computer was used, and that can be in any form, whether, regardless of whatever device is used. It can be a laptop, it can be your phone, but once that is sent, then it will fall under this Section 9, and then you're liable for prosecution under that offense. Now, from our perspective, when we get a case file, we have the burden of proving the case, and we rely on evidence. Not what we hear, not what is being said in the public, not what is in the media. It has to form part of the evidence before the court, and we have strict rules of evidence for that to be put, to be admissible, to be admitted in evidence and form a part of the evidence. It can be in the form of direct evidence, real evidence, documentary evidence, circumstantial evidence, forensic evidence, and expert evidence. Now, what I will focus on for this presentation in terms of strategic partnerships is evidence that, as prosecutors, we might need from service providers in proving offenses generally, but specifically as it relates to malicious communications. Now, I'm sure everyone here has a cellular phone. Some persons have two. And then a number of persons also have other devices, a tablet, a laptop, etc. And once you have a cell phone, then it is highly likely that this cell phone or this whatever device may have some evidential material on it that can be used as evidence for the prosecution of a crime. So using the example of malicious communications, if it is that a cell phone was used to send a message, a threatening message, and it was sent to another person, it has to be sent through a medium. Was a service provider used to transmit that message? Was it an instant message provider, a social media platform? What exactly is it that was used? So there might be some evidential material that is required by the prosecution to prosecute that offense. And a service provider can be defined as any public or private entity that provides to users of its service the ability to communicate by means of an information and communication technology system, or it processes or stores electronic data on behalf of such a communication service or users of such a service. And this definition was taken from the United Nations Treaty Against Cybercrimes, the draft United Nations Treaty. So different examples of service providers, you might have the social media, there might be a web hosting service, instant messaging service, cellular service provider, email, or internet service provider. Now, in the presentation, Mark spoke about the problem analysis triangle, the offender, the victim, and the location. And I believe Trevor also spoke on that. Now, interestingly, the data, it is possible that the data that is stored by the service provider will provide a link, because once you use your device, you leave a digital footprint. So it is possible that there is data from the service provider that can assist with an investigation. So if I use my cellular phone and I make a call, then the service provider may be able to provide information in terms of that call that was made. If they have the phone number, they can tell you what device was used using the IMEI number. And if they have the subscriber information, they can tell you, they should be able to say, who is this phone number attributed to? Each time you connect your device to a Wi-Fi network, you also leave evidence in terms of what device connected to this network. That is also potential evidence. So in instances where there are cases where some crimes where they don't know who committed the crime, but if it is that the network, the internet service provider is checked, you'd see that at a particular time where that murder was committed, or that whatever crime it is, this person was connected to this Wi-Fi network, and they should not have been at that home, for example. So, and we might get call data records, text message information, subscriber information. Every person has an email. Once you have an Android phone, you have to have a Gmail account. That is what you use to utilize the Google Play and other services. So on your cellular phone, you are engaging the services of several service providers. And that is potential evidence, whether from the emails that you sent, or whether it be a payment provider, whether it's Google Pay, Cash App, etc. All of that is potential evidence that might be valuable to the prosecution of a crime. Now, how do we get evidence from these service providers? I looked at the legislative framework that we have in Jamaica, and I identified the Interception of Communications Act. And this legislation prescribes procedure for telecommunications service provider to disclose or obtain certain data. That is one measure. What is one method of obtaining that evidence? So there's a legal procedure that can require the service providers to get that, to provide that information. 1 minute. Thank you. There's also the Cybercrimes Act of 2015, and you have a preservation order where an order can be made to the service provider once a judge is satisfied that the order can be made for the data to be preserved. That is, it should not be destroyed or rendered inaccessible. A search warrant could also be granted, or a production order for the data reasonably required for the purposes of criminal investigation or proceedings to be produced by whoever has that data in their possession. There are also instances where the service provider may not be located within our jurisdiction. Because as we know, several of the service providers, several of the services that we use, the emailing services, the social media services, those are not local companies. So in order to get evidence or evidential material from those service providers, we would have to employ certain international cooperation methods. You have mutual legal assistance. That is a method through which you can make applications to get evidentiary material. You have Interpol can be used. The law enforcement also has a 24/7 network, or there can be any other informal cooperation by law enforcement. And Mark alluded to that earlier when he spoke of the NWC case, how it is that cooperation between law enforcement, because the reality is cybercrimes are borderless. it's not your traditional crime where you may have the victim, the perpetrator in the same location. You can stay anywhere and commit a crime in somewhere that is very far away. Once you have that a device and you have access to it. So it requires cooperation from different law enforcement agencies globally. And lastly, if it is the recently adopted United Nations Convention Against Cybercrimes, this should address instances of strengthening international cooperation for combating cybercrimes. It creates a framework, a legal framework for law enforcement and a framework for international cooperation where it is that these cybercrimes are being investigated. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Judy Ann. It's interesting. Mark, I hear each of my panelists almost asking for this kind of elusive collaboration that you speak about. But it seems to be somewhere in the distance. Is this just a hypothetical sort of aspiration to have the kind of strategic collaborations that you speak about? Because I hear Judy Ann talking about from the prosecutorial standpoint, you know, the legislative pillars that she has to stand on, but the engagement with the service providers. I hear Charlotte saying, well, academia, we want to collaborate, but we don't have funding, we don't have partnership. I mean, how far are we from the hypothetical that you described?
Immediate answer that I wanted to say was no. We're not a million miles away from it, and I know that within MOCA there are links within academia. There are links to academia, for example, and I demonstrated the fact that we've got both strategic and we've worked on the tactical partnerships. I think the point is that the strategic partnerships that you have to be tactically selected. So you don't go for a strategic partnership with everybody. You pick and choose the ones that you are going to have a long-term relationship with. But the tactical partnerships come out of an operational need, as we said. So, and they happen on a day-to-day basis. They're happening all the time. So I think if there's anybody that wants a longer-term strategic partnership with law enforcement, whether it be JCF or MOCA, then I think it's absolutely on the cards and is welcome. And I'm getting a nod of the head from the right direction that I'm talking in the right area here. So I think it's absolutely on the cards, and it's more than possible. It's not easy, and sometimes it's about relationships, personal relationships, but fostering those and developing those is more than possible.
All right. What I've actually been asked to do, Chair, is to moderate a Q&A from the audience, give the audience an opportunity to engage with and interact with this August panel. So I'm going to invite any questions, and I say questions, not speeches or comments, but questions from the floor, in terms of what you've heard or any aspect of the domain that you feel a need to make an inquiry about. So please raise a hand. And do we have a mic? Oh. Chairman, you're asking a question?
I'm using the mic to walk around.
Okay. Any questions from the floor?
Good evening. Hi, my name is Daly Wright. I'm from the Ministry of Tourism. I had a question for the gentleman from 876 Solutions. How do you propose we achieve the strategic partnership in the low trust environment that you are speaking about? And I want to provide a context because I think it was the World Bank produced a document about low trust in the environment and particularly in our justice system and how we relate to that. Our citizens relate to the low trust in political persons, sorry, Dr. Chan, and our institutions, government institutions, and our justice system, and which is relevant to this right now. So with the low trust in the justice system specifically, how do you propose to forge strategic partnerships?
All right, so that's a really good question. So it's a very difficult it's a very difficult and complex thing if we don't appreciate certain basic things, right? So first, I think we underestimate that whole concept of trust and what is required to create and build this thing called trust. So I'm going to speak a little bit about that. But before I do that, in my mind, one of the things that I think is necessary for the channels that need to exist to work, I go back to, and Dr. McNaughton will appreciate this, and some in academia will appreciate this, the open source community. Anybody who's familiar with that? One of the things that was a huge challenge in the open source community was how do you get a bunch of people to agree upon a way to create let's say a piece of software when everybody has their own way of doing it, but everybody is contributing to this one thing. And what was created was there were these standards and structures and guidelines. When you layer on that, well, if I'm going to write this code, but I don't necessarily want this other person to know I wrote it, or I don't want them to see all of, my cool ways of doing things. How do you protect against those things? Then I think a similar type of thinking, because it's a thinking that we need to adopt, has to occur when we're trying to get people who naturally don't trust each other to still contribute to a particular end goal, right? So how do we do that? You have to create frameworks that people are comfortable with. So go and ask them. Get them together and say, okay, what would make this work for you? How do you feel comfortable sharing this information, and what is required for you to feel at ease sharing it with me, right? And what structures do we need to put in place to make that happen? So you see, when they have Crime Stop, and they say, look, just call this number, we don't care who you are, we just need the information. Rudimentary thing, but to a particular degree it works. Why? Because I want to give you the information, but I don't want to tell you who I am. So if I give you the means of doing it, then you start to get the information. The challenge with private sector entities, service providers, and so on is with the constraints of laws and reputational damage and information leaking, intellectual property that might go, okay, give me a channel that when I share certain bits of information with you, law enforcement or whoever, it doesn't go anywhere else, right? So that's a key component. Now, the trust part comes from when I share it with you, try to make sure it don't go to the road. Because if you tell me that I must trust you, demonstrate that. That's the hard part, right? Because, and that's where now law enforcement has to, and all those agencies have to put these measures in place to make sure that leakage of information doesn't occur. So to just, bring it back around, we need channels that everybody is comfortable with. But on the other side, we also need to make sure that when we say that when you give it to us, it's not going to go any further, things need to be there to make sure that it stays there. And once you can do that on a sustained basis, trust goes up, and then more information starts to come. And I think if we can do that, then the benefits of the strategic partnerships that we're looking for, we'll start to, see the kind of fruit that we want to get from it.
Okay. Thank you. Other question? Nick, I see one over here.
Thank you. Chair David White, University of Technology, School of Computing. Dr. Donalds, right, you spoke about the framework for greater collaboration and also the need to access local data. Can you expound on that some more? And then just what I was listening keenly to Trevor a while ago. Is it that we need MOCA and JCF and other agencies to say sanitize the data, right? Because they have the data. Person lady from DPP said that they have prosecuted a number of cases. So could we sanitize those cases and then make the data available to academia, right? So that we can process it and get the trends and so on. And then that will in turn recursively inform MOCA and JCF and the policymakers. Yeah. But you spoke about the framework you and Ozzy Bryson, right, created. Can you expound on that some more?
Right.
How can we move forward?
Right. Thank you so much. So that particular framework came about because some time ago I went to, I think I've told the story before, but I'm going to tell again. So I went to the JCF with the intention of doing some work there. My pet peeve is crime, right? But I'm an IS practitioner and, academic. So what I was told, sorry, Dr. Blake isn't here, but I was told at the time, based on what I wanted to do, that he was implementing a similar system in the JCF. At that time, Kevin was still a student here at the university. So then I decided, okay, so I have a challenge. I still like crime. Why not look at cybercrime? So then I decided that I was going to talk to the head of cybercrime then, Inspector Williams, Warren. And so we started talking. Fitz Bailey, actually, Chambers first was down there, that side, and then Fitz. And so, I kind of developed this relationship. So I started looking at cybercrime. But honestly, what I got was woefully inadequate. It was just some very basic data that was being collected, almost. And this was then, so maybe the data collection has improved significantly. But it was from that, I got thinking. So, and I said it to Warren at the time, listen, we need to do a better job of collecting the data so we can, better analyze the data. And it's more meaningful. So this framework came out of that particular effort. The idea was to move it forward, to actually create a website that was my proposal, for the public then to use, right, and log whatever information, whatever incident that they had experienced, whatever cyber incident. But it didn't go, it kind of ended there. But that was the intent, and that's how it came about. So I definitely saw the need at the time for the JCF to do a better job in collecting data so that it can become more meaningful, so we can now really see patterns, really see trends, and help us now to really form the strategies and the tactics if we don't have that data and we don't know really what's going on, how do we then, at that time, really deal with this monster? I haven't really been back. I see, Mr. Sterling, you're looking behind you. So maybe I'll come back to you now, see where we are, and see perhaps if we can extend that framework even more for, today's landscape. Thank you.
All right, is there a question from the floor?
Yeah, I have one.
Oh, go ahead.
All right. Good night, everyone. My name is Lorenzo Duarte. I'm MSBM. I'm in charge of IT, infrastructure, and security. So this is probably an open question or an assessment. I have noticed a trend in AI with the uptake in cybercrimes and the attacks on systems. On a national level, what have we been doing to put systems in place to help protect against the cyber attacks, and how we can roll that out more into institutions?
Who's going to take that? Oh, Mark?
I was going to pick up on the previous question and point the direction towards somebody who I think actually, with hindsight, would have been ideal on the panel. So Colonel Godfrey Sterling is in the audience. So when we were talking about statistics, if you're talking about statistics, general crime statistics, that's one thing. And obviously we were talking about cyber-enabled crime and cyber-dependent crime. There is two different things, and it actually fits in with the trust piece as well. So I think that there is a major piece of work which is ongoing, which hasn't been mentioned within the confines of this, which is around the cyber authority and the work that's being done centrally. I don't want to steal anybody else's thunder, but I know that there's a lot of work going on at that level, and will help towards both the previous question around trust, because of reporting anonymously and being able to provide that statistics then back in a format that could be digested by academia potentially, and it forms the cyber authority also then forms various. I don't want to steal your thunder, but it enables a national monitoring system, a national reporting system. It enables or sets up the framework for industry level collaborative forums, security operation centres, and so on. So there is a piece of work that's coming, but I'm going to leave it at that for now.
Just
Camille?
Speak a little bit on that.
Sorry, was there another question on the floor? Who's going to answer it?
I was going to speak to his.
You're going to respond to that?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, what AI, especially generative AI, but even more so machine learning, because everybody calls AI this thing and really mean generative AI, but AI and machine learning has fundamentally changed the landscape, the threat landscape. Makes all of our lives harder every day. Now, it's a cat and mouse game because the same techniques and technologies they're using to more rapidly create malicious software, heighten the attacks, and so on. On the other side, AI is being used to counter that, right? Now, the thing about that is it's, like I said, cat and mouse. Who is moving quicker on each side? The big thing with both of them is both of them require data, right? Now, it increases that whole concept now of where is the data, who has the data, and how is that data being used. Now, you ask about what is being done nationally to treat with some of these things. And, Godfrey has a very interesting presentation that speaks to the threat landscape. But one of the things I don't think the general public has a clue of is the capacity of CERT, MOCA, CTAC as it relates to cyber defense. And here's the thing. The sharing of information, that trust and information sharing thing you saw in my presentation, it goes both ways because law enforcement sometimes don't want to share the information with the public because, well, you know, this is national security stuff, but sometimes you need to let people know what your capacity is so that they actually believe you can do something with the information they could give you. So here's the thing. How do you share just enough and not too much as opposed to not sharing anything at all? Right? Because that's a balancing act. When you show them what your capabilities are, again, boost confidence and trust that, look, when I go to them, they can act on what I'm giving them. Needless to say, there's been a lot of work and a lot of investment in boosting the national cyber defense apparatus, but it's not like you're going to hear that in the news. I wish sometimes they would put it in the news because it would let people know that look, investments are being made, work is being done, and there are people here in Jamaica because another problem we have is we don't have capacity, we don't have knowledge. Is only our friends to the north or in Europe have that capability, but the capability exists right here. Nobody knows this, right? So I think, again, more information sharing needs to occur as it relates to the capabilities and what we're doing.
Okay. So, Camille, can we go until around 8 o'clock, which gives us time for another few questions?
Well, we have about 3 questions from online. I'll read 2, and Dania has 1, and I think we can wrap up after that.
Okay,
we can?
let's go.
All right, so first question, it comes from the MSBM YouTube channel. It's from Brian Thompson. I have seen evidence that international services such as WhatsApp, Meta, maintain a local CDN node. Can the operator of such a node be approached for information requests? I think Trevor is going to take that one. No?
Where have they seen evidence of the fact that this?
Yes.
Where are they saying that this is actually geographically located?
Go again with the response.
Where are they saying that it's geographically located?
Well, they did not say. So, Brian, if you're listening, maybe you want to put that in the chat and we will address it after. Next question comes from Dr. Cecile
Just
Dennis.
in general, big tech has very little interest and very little responsiveness to jurisdictions like ours, right? Is that a fair statement?
So let me.
So I think what you've got to understand is that a lot of the organisations, WhatsApp, Facebook, they have a global footprint, right? And whatever priorities Jamaica has is multiplied and magnified globally because everybody's doing exactly the same thing. So if you think that maybe Jamaica has 100 requests per day, per week, per month, whatever you want to call it at, that's going to be multiplied out. So therefore, these organisations will only ever deal with and respond to the most serious crime requests even before you start. And then when you consider the fact that there is a volume and prioritizations, it's very, very difficult to get much, if any, traction with them. It is possible, but it's a bit hit and miss. And it has to be the highest priority of inquiry before it will even be considered.
All right, the second question actually comes from Stokely Fagon. This is from Ms. Edwards. As a law enforcement practitioner myself, what are the challenges your office has experienced in prosecuting cybercrimes, and what are your recommendations to combat those challenges?
The learned acting DPP is whispering to me, service providers, and that was my main focus. That was my main focus in this presentation, following our discussions that we had as prosecutors, because Trevor mentioned reputational damage, and it's a cultural issue that we have in Jamaica, where persons do not like to go to court, they do not like to cooperate, they do not like to give evidence, because they think that not only is court a scary place, but they're afraid of what the impact, what the result, or what repercussions will result from that. And perhaps some service providers, they're afraid of reputational damage if it is that they attend court to give evidence. However, how it is that what could be done in relation to that is to sensitize the service providers, because they have an important role to play. And not only service providers, but also we require expert evidence from forensic experts, and they producing the whatever analysis that they done, and for us to get that in a timely manner. That is another challenge that we have as prosecutors, where we see sometimes, because the evidence is not being produced in a timely manner, that contributes to the backlog that is in the courts. We have a matter before the court, the document that we need, whatever forensic report that we need, it takes several years to be produced. And then we have dates after dates, year after year, and we don't have that material. What eventually happens is that it becomes unfair. We have to perhaps dispose of the matter without that report. So if it is that we can get the necessary evidence from the stakeholders within the administration of justice in a timely manner, that could assist with the prosecution of a lot of the cybercrime offenses.
Anything else from online?
Yes, we have one more question coming from MOCA's Facebook page from Wendy Miller. How is legislation being upgraded or updated to match the pace of technology that is being upgraded almost daily?
No, on a real note, I mean, seriously. And you heard it said that the Cybercrimes Act is of 2015. But check this out. But a new piece of legislation was in the works, Giant Select Committee. Where is it, right? The Telecommunications Act that deals with how we communicate, because all of these fancy devices that we use and all that, it's a 2000 Act, 24 years old. It's not relevant to today's dispensation. We have interception of communications, all of these things. The thing about it is we have the dots, we have legislation. What is not happening is we're not promulgating them and reviewing them quickly enough, because I don't think there is a full appreciation of the gravity of the situation that these laws need to address, right? So until perhaps something really bad happens, that if the law was there to treat with it, then it's not going to become a priority, because we have a lot of priorities and we tend to be very reactive, right? So until something really bad happens, that, if we had implemented this law on time, even though it was sitting there, until we do that, then the urgency and the priority isn't there. And this is not a situation where we're trying to indict, say, policymakers. This is a culture, because the whole away love wait till the last minute to do things. So we need to rise above that culture and bring some urgency to an understanding and appreciation of what the real issue is. You can't see it, but when it reaches you, it hurts, right? When cyber crimes and the threats that are out there reach you, it is already too late to do something. So you need to act before it hits you, right? So that's what we need to do with the legislation and the thinking, both from us as citizens and in the policymaking arena. Can't wait until it happens, because when it happens, it's already too late.
And if I may,
all right. Thank you, panelists. Respond to that.
Yes,
Sorry.
may I just add to what Trevor said, because that is also a challenge for prosecutors as well, because where we have legislation from 2015, and then now, if you think about 9 years ago, how much technology has advanced since then, and if you don't have the framework, the legal framework to prosecute these offenses, I mean, some of the offenses or some things that are being done will still fit into the legislative framework, because the way our legislations are drafted, they're pretty general to go beyond the time that it was made. But however, based on the nature of technology and the advancement, they might be regarded as insufficient. However, we know that there's a bill before Parliament, and what came to mind is the submissions that were made from the various departments and stakeholders. Would those still be relevant by the time that that act is passed, whether it be 2024, 2025, 2026, or we need to go back to the drawing board and start those submissions again, because now we have AI and other things that we need to consider?
All right, so the last round of questions, just right, and we're going to be asking that people do not speak in paragraphs in this third round. Keep it to sentences. All right, so we need to wrap up. Let's go again. Last round of questioning.
All right, thank you, Chairman. Colonel Edwards, Minister, I think that we've really just scratched the surface of what is an important conversation. And we really, I know I speak on behalf of my Executive Director. We look forward to the opportunity to extend this collaboration between MSBM and MOCA to really ventilate this a lot more. Certainly one of the things that we didn't touch on is the fact that the greatest vulnerability and exposure to cybersecurity threats arise when employees and citizens lack sufficient awareness and education in just how to behave appropriately online. And so the way we engage with citizens, the way we get civil society involved, has to be part of this strategic collaborative discussion. And I think that in academia we have a role to play in that whole capacity building and awareness and education. So, you know, just for me to thank my panelists. I know there's much more to talk about, but Chairman, yes. I appreciate your patience, and we're just going to turn back over to you without any further comments.
In fact, if you had gone 30 seconds more, my name would have been changed from Lawrence to Job, right? But as Ecclesiastes 3, there is time for everything. Sir, so this time I'm going to be calling on Colonel Desmond Edwards to do some presentations. I understand that you want to engage you, sir. And Camille going to assist you. Camille? So. And the first one who will come for presentation, Dr. David McBean. And then we have Dr. Maurice McNaughton. And we have Dr. Charlotte Donalds. Mr. Trevor Forrest. And then Miss Julianne. Yes? I think they have the wrong name. I didn't call that last name. I didn't. Right, because I know the name that is here is incorrect. That's why I did. Right. Yeah? That's Julianne Edwards. And then there's another name there.
And the reason he can't read is because it's his name, Dr. Lawrence Nicholson.
All right, and then it's for me to give my closing remarks. But thanks for coming. And again, on behalf of the Mono School of Business and Management, we are here. We have the absorbed capacity to accommodate you in any intellectual discourse. So name the topic and provide the resources, and we provide the space. All right? And indeed, even the intellectual input. Call us, we will respond, because our purpose is to educate. Right? And as we said, we informed, and we care not to rearrange your ignorance. So again, thanks for coming. And interact as we go outside. I think there's some refreshment, as I suspect. But even there, if there's not, right, we don't encourage you to eat the grass. Right? Have a great night. And thank you again. Thanks to everyone who participated and online. Right? And have a good night. Bye-bye.